This is Life with Dyslexia, Maddie's Story by Riley Jones. A little bit about Maddie's background. Maddie is a 24-year-old adult female with dyslexia. She moved to the US from Canada when she was in second grade after attending school in the US. In second grade, she moved to Singapore and attended school there for third and fourth grade before moving back to the US for grades 5 through 12. She was diagnosed with dyslexia when she was in third grade and attending school in Singapore. She's currently a student at BYU, Idaho, and she is an elementary education major with a middle school science emphasis. This is just a little bit about her early life or when she was in grade school, just keeping in mind that this is when she was diagnosed with dyslexia. It was a really difficult time for her. Her parents were really frustrated and confused because her reading skills were low. And as you can imagine, because her parents were frustrated and they expected so much and put so much pressure on her, she felt a lot of pressure and she felt frustrated with herself when she couldn't live up to her parents' expectations. She also felt embarrassed in class. She told me that she would struggle reading out loud, and sometimes she would just stop reading and sit down because she was too embarrassed, and she cried over that a lot. Her teachers played a big role in helping her overcome those things by assigning her reading parts that would be easier for her to read, that had a lot of her sight words that she could read easily without getting mixed up. And this helped her build a lot more confidence in early grade school. These are some of her strengths and weaknesses in learning. Some of her strengths are she developed a lot of tools that help her to learn, and we'll talk about those tools a little bit later. She's gotten a lot better at managing her time. She understands her learning and she gives herself ample time to complete the assignments that she needs to. She did really well in science class because it was so hands-on and experience-based learning that instead of just sitting and reading and writing, she was able to actually experience her learning, and that helped her brain a lot. Some weaknesses, um, again, it takes her longer to read and write. Therefore, it takes her longer to do assignments and assessments. Because doing these assignments takes longer, it's not very motivating for her to complete those tasks. And so she finds herself procrastinating a lot. She struggled a lot in math as well as reading and writing because reading word problems was a challenge. She would kind of just go straight to the numbers and look for key phrases like add or subtract, which doesn't always get the correct answer. And she also has dyscalculia, which is where she gets numbers confused for each other. We'll talk about that a little bit later, as well as dysgraphia, which we'll also be talking about in the next slide. So what is dyscalculia? Dyscalculia is a learning disorder that affects people's ability to do math. Much like dyslexia, it disrupts areas of the brain related to reading. Dyscalculia affects brain areas that handle math and number-related skills and understanding. Symptoms of this condition usually appear in childhood, but adults may have dyscalculia without knowing it. So Maddie described her experience with dyscalculia as she would be reading too fast through a word problem or looking at a problem too quickly and confuse twos for sevens or fours for sixes or nines for eights. And she coped with that dyscalculia by just slowing down and paying closer attention to what she was doing and making sure that she was getting the numbers right on the problems, which obviously took longer, but it was helpful for her to take that extra time. Dysgraphia is a neurological condition and a learning difference in which someone has difficulty with writing for their age level. This can range from issues with the physical act of writing to issues with translating thoughts into written words. Dysgraphia is manageable with interventions that can help you learn new writing strategies. She described to me some of the strategies and tools that she used were really focusing on the words that she was writing and picturing in her mind what a 3D model of each letter would look like, as well as she learned sign language and she would sign to herself to help her remember what those letters looked like. Like I said, she is a student here at BYU Idaho, and she's an elementary education major. And so she talked about some of the experiences that she's had at the university with accommodations that professors have given her for her dyslexia. Some good, some bad. Some of the negative accommodations or lack of accommodations. There's a special aid office on campus that allows her to have more time for exams. However, a lot of professors don't allow her to have that allotted time for exams that she's taking in class. Not having that extra time really gave her a lot of anxiety, and she would get really low scores on those exams because she didn't have that extra time to really read the questions and think about what it was asking her. Um, and that didn't help with the test anxiety that she already had. However, there was a lot of positive experiences that she had with professors giving her accommodations. Some professors have allowed her to use scratch paper on exams that wouldn't normally have scratch paper because she finds it really helpful to draw out the problem. And so, them giving her that resource has been really useful for her. She remembers having a final exam from a few semesters ago, and it was in person. She felt really anxious because she didn't feel like her professor was going to give her the time that she needed or the paper that she needed. But this professor knew of her learning disorder and was really helpful. She provided that paper, she provided extra time for Maddie to complete the assignment, as well as this professor even was willing to let her try to read the questions on her own. Um, but if that was taking too long or she was struggling, she was willing to step in and read those questions for her, which was really kind. Um, Again, she has developed a lot of tools that have helped her be successful in school. And so, one that she started using really early on, and sometimes teachers would provide this resource for her. She had a bookmark to keep track of where she was reading because the words kind of moved while she was reading, or they just disappeared off the page altogether. Like I was talking about earlier, she learned sign language that has helped her remember and visualize what different letters and numbers look like. Um, she also uses a lot of audiobooks so that she can follow along while she reads, and it helps her to see the word and hear the word simultaneously, and that helps her to make sense of what she's reading. Some accommodations that I asked her what would be helpful that you haven't been provided, and she said an L-shaped tool, so the words don't escape off the page. She said this is really helpful for especially when it's like the end of a paragraph, the words kind of get lost. Or translucent colored paper helps her focus. She can anticipate the coming lines, but this tool helps them from merging together. And having someone read the question to her, which she had that accommodation previously, but not all the time. Finally, I asked her what was any advice that she had for teachers, and this really stuck with me the most as a future teacher. She said, students with dyslexia and dysgraphia, the main focus should be to let them struggle. The more struggling and the more grit they have to build, they find themselves in a position to be strong and to motivate themselves to do the things that their brain is mixing up. That's actually a direct quote from our interview. Um, she really feels strongly that it's so important for teachers to allow students to have the chance to really struggle through a problem without just giving up on them and trying to fix things for them or tell them the answer, because that doesn't help them learn anything. She believes it's really important for them to figure things out on their own, as well as teachers going through multiple tools and setting up an IEP for these students that are struggling with dyslexia. Um, and then again, she really struggles with having enough time to do her assignments. And although she has gotten really good at managing her time, it's still useful to always have that extra time allotted for those assignments, exams, because it takes so much time for them to read and write. Um, and also this one stuck out to me because my content area is math, and she said using these tools to help students not only in language arts class, these tools can help students with learning disorders in every single class. Um, and teach students to use tools appropriately, not as a crutch, but as a resource to help them when they're struggling, but once they feel confident that they can try things on their own. And here's another quote from our interview. She said, "Never give up on them. As much time and struggle that they need, never give up on them." And so I really took away giving them time and letting them work through things on their own and giving that time to work through things on their own. I really appreciate Maddie letting me kind of dig into her brain and for her being so vulnerable and letting us understand dyslexia and the struggles that come with it better.